Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Dennis Carroll from Hunting the Shadows. Christmas 2023 is about to pass away from us in just a few short hours. But there's time for one more story, one more Christmas story that tells about the greatest gift of all. I hope you enjoyed. He was a common, simple man. He lived a simple life. He was a farmer out in the Midwest. He was a good, honest man. He dealt with people the way he wanted to be dealt with. He really lived by the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. He was a good man, like I said, an honest man, hard-working man. His family had owned that family farm for over 150 years. He worked it happily. He, his wife, and his several children that he had. Like I said, he was an honest and good man, a moral man, an upright and just good citizen. But there was one thing about him. He just couldn't understand this Jesus thing. He couldn't understand how anyone could make such a sacrifice for an uncaring and unfeeling world. He just could not wrap his mind around that. So he was not really agnostic. He kind of believed, but yet he just couldn't understand. He was a man of simple facts, and this seemed to throw him very much. It had been snowing off and on all day on that Christmas Eve, and when night fell, there were snow squalls. The wind picked up. His wife, a very devout woman, and their children had decided to attend the Christmas Christmas Eve service that would last until midnight and would usher in, of course, Christmas Day. But of course, he declined, and she, knowing how he was, she didn't push the fact and push the matter at all. But he decided to stay home and perhaps just read the paper and wait for them to get back home. Sometime probably around 1 after midnight, definitely. And so he was just loitering around while they left. And he was thinking about putting his pajamas on, but he was sitting by the fire. And he got through reading the paper. And he laid the paper aside and he got into thought. He started thinking about things. A lot of things about his farm, the family, what they were doing tonight, the Christmas Eve service. He just didn't want to go because it would make him feel like a hypocrite, because he had so many unanswered questions in his mind. And that was why he really didn't go with them, the one reason why. But he knew they'd understand. Well, it was very close to midnight when he heard the noise. At first, he didn't understand what it was. He thought it was perhaps the wind blowing some old leaves against the house or something, but he heard it very distinctly. So he got up and he went to his patio door, one of those big sliding glass doors, and he looked out, but trying to see out into the darkness from a lighted house is not easy to do. So he said he kept hearing this noise, and weird noise. He couldn't understand what it was. So he decided to put his big coat on. He got his flashlight and decided to go outside and investigate this. Also, he also turned on the house lights outside, the outside house lights. So he turned on the outside house lights and went outside. And he went around the side of the house and then he saw what was making the noise. A rather large flock of birds had become disoriented in the storm and then the snow squall, and they were flopping around out there on the snow in the cold, freezing weather. And he could even feel some sleet now in the snow coming down. And it was like off and on, but the wind was picking up. It was a very, very cold night, probably approaching the teens, definitely. And these crazy birds were out there flopping around in the snow. Evidently, of course, they'd gotten disoriented somehow or another. Maybe they'd gotten scared out of their roost or whatever, because birds don't usually fly at night. But it's very strange. So the man said, "Look at these stupid birds. They're all going to die out here in the snow if they don't, get up and go back to where they were, or something. It's got to be something I can do to maybe help them. So the man thought about the problem and he kept looking and he said, maybe if I could get them in the barn, if I could get them into the barn and then where it's warm and out of the cold weather, the wind and the snow and the ice. If I could get them in there, they would be all right. So he went and he opened the big sliding doors on the barn and he cut the barn lights on and he tried to shoo the birds into the barn. But it didn't work out that well because they would scatter. Some would go this way, some of them no, but they wouldn't stay together until he would leave them alone. Then they would come back again together. But they just kept scattering every time he tried to usher them and shoo them into the barn. And he said, "Well, what in the world am I going to do? These stupid, crazy birds, they're going to die out here if I don't get them some kind of help. If I don't, do something to save them, they're just going to die for nothing out here." And so he kept thinking about the problem and said, maybe I got it. Maybe if I could get some bird seed and make a little trail from the birds into the barn, they'll follow the seeds and go in there, and they'll be safe. They'll be saved. There won't be any harm and all that. Well, it was approaching midnight, and the guy was getting desperate, trying to save these disoriented birds. And so he went back in the house and he got a big bag that his wife kept, a bag of birdseed. And he went out there and he started scattering it in a trail from the birds to the barn and made a pretty heavy trail of it so they would catch it. And he tried to shoo the birds up to the seed, and they would go up to the seed for a minute, but then they'd scatter again and just flopping around out there in the snow. And he tried for several minutes to get them onto the seed and to lead the seed into the barn, but he couldn't get them to do anything. And so he was becoming very frustrated. He said, "Well, I've tried everything. I've tried to shoo them in the barn. I tried to scare them into the barn. I tried to lead them into the barn. Look at these stupid birds. If I could, only communicate with them, and like, lead them into the barn to safety. They wouldn't have to die out here in the cold and the darkness and the wind. They wouldn't have to perish. This is stupid, These birds, if they could just follow me, if they would just do what I told them to, but they won't listen. They won't follow my directions. What can I do? I've tried everything I could think of. If I could just, if I could be a bird, if I could be a bird, if I could be one of them, and I could know what it feels like to be a bird, and they could follow me, I could lead them into the barn, that would be the solution if I was just a bird. If the birds would recognize me as another bird, they would follow me to safety and be saved and not die. They wouldn't have to die out of here alone in the darkness and the cold. They wouldn't have to die if I could just save them. That's it. If I could just be a bird like them, if I could be a bird like them and save them, if I could just do that. And then there was a sound coming across the frozen fields and the dark, snowy night and in the wind. It was midnight, and the Christmas bells began to ring, and he heard them coming across the snow. And it suddenly occurred to him, it suddenly dawned upon him like a light from a star shining bright. This was what the Jesus thing was all about. He became one of us to show us the way, to lead us into that barn to safety, so we would not have to perish. We would not have to die. He became one of us to do that. And that's what the Jesus thing was all about. It dawned on him. Suddenly the halls of his heart opened up, and he knew, he understood now what Jesus was all about and why he was the greatest gift of all. And the man fell to his knees in the snow. And that's the story, my friends, of the greatest gift of all. And we can accept that gift. It has no price. You don't have to pay for it. It is given to us freely. The greatest gift of all. And it is ours for the taking. It was given to us to have if we will only receive the greatest gift of all into our hearts this Christmas season. I hope you enjoy this story. And we look forward to more entertaining stuff with you in the future. And I want to wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and a very happy and safe and healthy New Year. Remember to embrace the mystery until we get together again. And as Tiny Tim would say, God bless us, everyone.